All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth and final roundtable of the Mayor's Innovation Roundtable Speaker Series. This roundtable is focused on startups, and we've gathered a really good, diverse, strong representation of startups, all with the goal of asking, how can we collectively, as the innovation community, really drive innovation and take it to the next level and really position Pittsburgh further. This is very much along the city's vision, and all this wouldn't have happened without the mayor bringing us together. So with that, Mayor Peduto.
Thanks, Deborah, and it's great to see a lot of friends in the room. So the past several years, and there's a lot of people here who can really attest to this, Pittsburgh's been going through a transformation. And it's one that keeps excelling more and more each year, one that keeps growing, and it's sort of catching a wind of itself. And it's one that's based on innovation. And there are companies that are in this room, startups, some of which weren't around 5 years ago. Others that were, that have seen growth. Many of you are being pulled and being told that you need to go to the West Coast, you need to go to Boston, you need to go to the areas where there's investment that would happen in order for your companies to grow. And what we're here to say is we're working to build the environment to make sure that you can prosper here. We have the talent in this city to build out an entirely new economy. And with these different roundtables that we've had, we've basically been pursuing an opportunity to find where our strengths lie. We've had conversations with the White House about the makers movement and how the Silicon Valley is trying to claim that it is the home of where the makers movement will be happening. When was the last time that you heard about the Silicon Valley making anything? They provide ideas, they provide innovation. But when it comes down to turning those types of ideas and innovation into a product, you find that in cities like Pittsburgh, in Detroit, in Buffalo. And what's called the Rust Belt with pride is the ability to be able to produce and the ability to be able to innovate and create it. And that's what we have over the Silicon Valley. When we talked about the clean tech industry and the ability of not only looking at new ways of producing energy, not just the old ways of the old economy of the fossil fuels, but in the new ways of being able to create the buildings that don't need the energy because they produce as much energy as they use, of creating transportation systems that use different types of algorithms to cut down on the need of energy. And you can think of all of the different opportunities that are right here in Pittsburgh. And then when it comes down to workspace and co-space locations, the ability to create incubators that work together. Where would you have a better opportunity? New York, Chicago, or Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh in a city where the community is able to actually talk together, not just read about each other, and the ability to find locations where you can build it out for $5, $10, or $20,000 and build your own incubator and bring in your own companies and have the ability to start your own company with very little capital at the beginning. And then the final part where we're at today, the people, the entrepreneurs, the innovators, and those that fund them. And the capacity that we have within this city right now to bring all of those together, our strong parts, our niche industries, our future, just like it was 150 years ago with coal and steel and railroad, all the different components building out an industry. And it's all here right now. And in this room, there are the CEOs and the entrepreneurs and the soon-to-be entrepreneurs and the investors that represent over 1,000 employees in the city of Pittsburgh that within the next 5 years could easily be 10,000. You want to see a boom industry, it's not about a cracker plant in Beaver County. It's about a cracker old plant in East Liberty that has a place called Google in it that is also spinning off others that are bringing 1,000 people in who are going to want to start their own companies and be in an environment as well. And that's where our future is. And that's where you're at. And now we need to find out what this city government has to do to pour gasoline on the fire that you're creating.
Thank you, Mayor. So to set the stage for this discussion, we're going to have 6 short presentations. And these presentations are really going to give us a little bit of a flavor of some of the different companies that are in Pittsburgh, their software, hardware, ones just starting, and some that have been around for a while. And I'm going to introduce all of our speakers. So our speakers today are Dick Zhang, who is the president and CEO of Identified Technologies, which is a company that creates flying robots that enables people to collect data very quickly and accurately from the sky. Luke Skirman, who is the CEO of Niche.com, which provides reviews and insights from everyday experts to help you choose a neighborhood, a college, or a K-12 school. Ann Lopez, who is the CEO of Romeo Delivers, which is a company that creates products that provide a simple way for you to connect with your loved ones or people who are important to you in your life. Kevin Dowling, who's the Vice President of Engineering at 4Moms. They are a company that develops juvenile products on robotic technology. Matthew Stanton, CEO of Soul Power. They create shoe insoles that allow you to charge your mobile devices. Rob Meyer, the founder and president of No Wait. It's a restaurant application that allows hostesses to create wait lists and send you texts and to communicate that way so you're not standing around waiting for hours for your reservation. So on that note, I would like to invite Dick to come up to the podium.
Good afternoon, guys. Mayor Peduto, Jennifer, Deborah, thank you for having me. My name is Dick Zhang, and I lead our efforts at Identified Technologies. So what we see on both construction sites and energy sites is they need a lot of data to operate safely and efficiently. But right now they're capturing this data by deploying boots on the ground, by utilizing commercial helicopters, and by utilizing satellite imagery. And it's slow, it's dangerous, and it's expensive. So at Identified, we deliver these teams of flying robots to go out and capture this information faster, cheaper, and more frequently. So we started Identified out of Philadelphia, actually. This was 2 years ago, and ended up moving to Pittsburgh September of last year. So we've been here for a year now. It's been a great time. We came here for a program called Alpha Lab Year, which is sponsored by Innovation Works. And just reflecting back, we thought the big drivers for coming to Pittsburgh were, again, as Mayor Peduto said, we build things, and there are a few places better to build things in this country or the world than Western PA. And then the other two big drivers for us were a lot of our customer base is in big business and heavy industry. And so if you're in energy and construction, there's few places better to be than Western PA and this region. And then the final reason for us to come out here was, we work in robotics and high technology, and with University of Pittsburgh, Chatham, and Carnegie Mellon, there was a huge talent base for us to be able to pull from and help us make this vision happen. So been in Pittsburgh for a year now, having a great time. Happy to address any conversations on robotics, Pittsburgh, or anything of the like. And again, I'm Dick Zhang with Identified. Thanks for having me.
I'm Luke Skirman. I'm the CEO of Niche.com. I'm going to try to, in 3 minutes, give you my 12-year entrepreneurial journey. I came from San Francisco, and I wanted to go to a great college and did all this research. And in the end, I ended up choosing Carnegie Mellon. And when I got to campus, there were some people that just kind of randomly chose, and there were some people that were methodical about it. But when I took a step back, I realized it was such an important decision. You're going to spend 4 years of your life, make friends, make family, do all these things from school, and the process was lacking the students. That user-generated reviews, that insight, that's what was missing. Yes, there was the statistics and the facts like US News or College Board, but that user-generated content like a Yelp or like a TripAdvisor. So for the first 5 years in business, we started capturing that user-generated content combined with facts and stats and publishing physical books. We sold over 500,000 books for the first 5 years in business, millions of dollars in revenue. But the users, our students, wanted information online. So we started selling online subscription access from 2007 to 2009, and that was good. But what really happened was that the advertisers really wanted to get in front of these users, and the users didn't really want to pay for content. So finally, we opened up the website, made it free in 2009, and traffic has been booming. So last year, 30% of every high school senior in the United States created a College Prowler account on our website. Last year, we also rebranded the company as niche.com, and our vision got a lot bigger. So my favorite definition of niche is a place, employment, status, or activity for which a person or thing is best fitted. We want to help people make great life decisions. So we started with colleges. Now we have coverage on every 120,000 schools in the United States. That's kindergarten, middle school, charter, parochial. We have every neighborhood and city, and now all the data is starting to connect. So people that went to Mount Lebanon High School went to Carnegie Mellon and live in Shadyside. This has never really existed before in the United States. We have 40 million reviews and opinions. We're based in Shadyside. We'll finish the year at about 35 people. Revenues have quadrupled in the last 4 years, and it's going very, very well. Love Pittsburgh. The cost of living is low. We've been able to retain our employees, and it's just provided everything that we've ever wanted. Today's event is a perfect example. Having a true seat at the table with the mayor is exactly what we could ask for. We love being in Pittsburgh. We love having our business here, and we love everything that the startup community is embodying right now. Thank you for having me today.
Hi, I'm Ann Lopez, the founder and CEO of Romeo Delivers. I have a couple slides here, I think. Well, this is just our logo. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about Romeo Delivers and how we've really feel like we've flourished here in Pittsburgh and all the resources that are available to startups. And we're a new startup. We've only been around for about a year. And we create products, physical products, that allow people to connect in more creative and unique ways. A lot of people like to call us the hallmark for hipsters because we believe that people want to connect, and sometimes filling out a note card and looking at that blank sheet of paper, they don't know what to write. So we really make it simple for the person who wants to give something and really valuable for the person who wants to receive it, so that they're really getting some personalized message. So some of our products here are BAM notes, which are fill-in-the-blank sticky notes, as an example. We have Message in a Bottle, which is a really popular product where you just fill out a little strip of paper, put it in the little bottle, give it to someone. And these products have been really successful for us. And we're right here in Pittsburgh and East Liberty. And I just wanted to mention that because we just feel like there's such a community there. When you walk out the door, you run into half of the people that are in this room. And it's a really great feeling to know there's a lot of people who have things in common with us that are working toward the same goals, and that helps so much. And I also wanted to go over some of the other kinds of partners that we've had that have really helped us get to where we are. And the first group is, some people talked about the incubators and all these startup accelerators that are here in Pittsburgh. And we've gotten funding and support from Innovation Works through Alpha Lab and Alpha Lab Gear, and that has been invaluable for us as a way to start our business. We've also gotten a lot of support from the local media, which has been huge. I don't know if anyone else is going to talk about this today, but I really think that's something that maybe the mayor's office could help with, that if there was a way that these local media could focus on startups, that would help a lot. We've also been able to connect with people at some of the local community organizations. Just the meetups are great. Pittsburgh Tech Council has been amazing for us, and the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Carnegie Mellon has also been really great for us. And then finally, we have some service providers that have been really great and given us discounts. And I think that's really important for startups and for some service providers to realize that this could be a really great thing for them to help startups, give them reduced cost for services, and hopefully we'll all be successful companies and can pay them full price eventually. So based on that, I kind of just put together this graphic of the different areas that I felt like startups really need help with. And maybe just to start a discussion here about, there are physical things like office space that we've gotten from Alpha Lab and Alpha Lab Gear, but maybe other people don't have access to. And so that's maybe something to talk about. Funding, networking, mentors, service providers, the media, and then individuals, which Mayor Peduto did talk about. And I just think that there are so many people out there, when they hear about all that's going on, they really want to be involved, and maybe there's a way to get individuals in the community involved in a different way, where sometimes a startup just needs someone to take a survey or be in a focus group, or we just need them to tell their friends about what's going on with the startup community. So maybe there's a way to bring those people together who are interested and make sure they know what's going on and how they can help. And that's all I have today. Thank you so much.
I'm Kevin Dowling. I'm with Four Moms. Unlike some of the folks that Mayor Peduto mentioned, I actually moved here from Boston a few months ago to join Four Moms. Four Moms is a local company. It started in 2005, 2006 by Henry Thorne and Rob Daly. It's grown, it's quite successful. It's about 160 people right now in the Strip District. By the end of the year, we're actually moving downtown into what is now known as the Fiserv building. It'll be known as the Four Moms building henceforth by the end of the year. So the company's been very successful, did around 30 million in revenue last year. We're on track to do around 50 million this year. So it's very fast-paced growth. And coming back to Pittsburgh, because I went to school here, was a natural thing. I was looking at startups both on the West Coast and the East Coast. I was looking at a variety of companies. But what I liked about Four Moms was not just the team and the products and the technology, but was the culture around it. And when I called folks here in Pittsburgh, called my advisor, Red Whitaker at Carnegie Mellon. I talked to Kit. I talked to many other folks here in Pittsburgh, and things had changed a lot. Mayor Peduto alluded to this in his opening talk, that things have really improved. With that said, though, there are many things that can improve even more, and some of the things that I look at when I talk to local entrepreneurs about Pittsburgh and what things that can happen better. If we look at, for instance, financing in general for companies, there are very few, in fact, one entrepreneur said zero, but I know that's not true, sources of seed capital and startup capital, sort of a network of angel investors that allows us to create new companies and create new jobs here in Pittsburgh. Innovation Works is very important in that gap. I know Henry specifically has benefited from Innovation Works and has started 3 companies due to Innovation Works and created many jobs as a result. Another is in recruiting. The flip side of it is, although in certain areas like RF, semiconductors, and a few other areas, usually deep technical areas, in general, Pittsburgh has a very good pool of applicants around traditional engineering functions and marketing and finance and so forth. But in some areas it's a little tough, but it's a little less competitive here, right? You're not competing for the same small pool of people. You're getting people here longer term because they're really committed to Pittsburgh and they're committed to the companies that they join. You don't find that as much on the other coasts. And if one thing in Pittsburgh that still has to be changed, I'm trying to recruit people right now out of large established companies here in Pittsburgh, and they perceive a lot of risk in startups. They perceive more risk in a small company than in a large company, when in fact the reverse is true. When you see large companies doing layoffs, when you see their businesses faltering, it's actually the startup companies and the innovative companies that are really driving a lot of job growth right now. We have open positions for 20 to 30 people right now. And we need to change that perception in people, though. We need several very successful startups in Pittsburgh to be able to do that. And finally, and this is a point that Ann brought up, which is really, really important, it's more mentoring. If you have a good idea, how do you execute on it? Because having a great idea is no guarantee that you will succeed, because you need good people to advise on the financial side. You need good people to advise on the legal side. You need a lot of mentoring on business in general. So the good idea alone is not enough. But we're working very hard, and our company, Four Moms, is working very hard with the community of people in order to try to encourage other startups. And we're working closely with high school STEM programs as well. So we spend a fair amount of our time actively involved in the community to do that and encourage the next generation of startups here in Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Matt Stanton. I'm one of the founders of Soul Power. What Soul Power is doing is we're creating a power-generating shoe insole that allows people to charge mobile electronics while they walk. So after about an hour of walking, you'll end up with 2.5 hours of talk time back on your device. So we're a consumer product-based company. It's a hardware company. We've been able to leverage a lot of the resources in the area, such as Alpha Lab, Innovation Works, as well as some of the resources at Carnegie Mellon, which is where myself and my co-founder graduated from. One of the things that you see with hardware startups as opposed to software startups is that you need more time, money, space, and people to actually execute your plan. For a software startup, there are certain aspects such as shipping, receiving, manufacturing, and certain operation tasks that aren't in the startup itself because it's a virtual product. But for a hardware product, being able to actually produce and deliver your end product is something that's incredibly important. And what we've been able to leverage around Pittsburgh is actually using Tech Shop to rapid prototype some of our components, and go back to some of the shops in Carnegie Mellon to have those components made for us. What we see is something that is a gap in something that hardware startups need in the area is a resource besides Tech Shop, where Tech Shop is great for something that is a smaller volume, quick to produce, but it's often not to the tolerances that you need, but something that's a high tolerance, quick turnaround vehicle that hardware startups can actually go to and say, I need this part tomorrow, not in 3 to 5 business days. Tech Shop will give you something that's not high tolerance, and you make yourself, which is wonderful. You know the entire process, but adding that vehicle to the area would be tremendous. On the manufacturing side, we've worked with a ton of people around Pittsburgh who have helped us with our manufacturing, connected us with the right people so that we can actually produce everything that we've designed at this point. I'd like to thank you for your time and appreciate having us here today.
Hi everyone, I'm Rob Meyer. I'm one of the founders of No Wait. No Wait is an anti-reservation app for restaurants that don't take reservations. We have 2 components. One is the consumer piece that the mayor got in line at Mercurio's right around the inauguration, so you don't have to wait in line. And then we have a restaurant app that the restaurant uses to increase their efficiency, manage their seating process by allowing people to put their name on the list physically, and then walk away from the restaurant and then come back. I wanted to talk just about the specifics of starting a software company. As Matt said, it's kind of a lot different, and some of the advantages I think that we've had being here in Pittsburgh. A couple facts about us right now. We're in a few thousand restaurants across the U.S. We've served over 70 million guests with our app since we started a little over 3 years ago launching it. And to put that in perspective, in the last 30 days, we've done 7.2 million guests. So you can see the acceleration that our growth is having. We've done 10% of our total volume in the last month. And if you haven't got the app, you can get it right there by texting No Wait to 83992 or go to our website, find No Wait. So I wanted to talk on my one slide kind of about the 2 important aspects of creating a software company. It's really about the people that you recruit, kind of the advisors, and the space that you get. So this is kind of a little brief timeline of our life at No Wait. We started in mid-2010 in Alpha Lab with 4 co-founders. And our payroll was 0 because everyone was working on the dream. We recruited 2 unpaid interns through Innovation Works during that time, and our payroll was still 0. We launched our first app in April of 2011, and at that time we took on some seed funding, primarily from Innovation Works and other personal angels, friends and family. And our payroll grew a little bit. We paid a couple of our interns $10 an hour, and we hired a few other people. So we were at about 6 to 8 people by that time. In between that time, we moved out of Alpha Lab. An important area of our growth was moving into Startup Town down at the bottom, which allowed us to scale our space and our team kind of very cost effectively and grow up to the point where we did our Series A and raised $2 million from local investors, Birchmere. We had about 12-ish employees around that time, and the $2 million enabled us to increase our sales and marketing and really hire more people because our business software is based on people. We are able to sell, as Matt said, very cost effectively because we don't have to distribute anything. The App Store, the Apple App Store, is our distribution channel, and all of our sales are primarily done based on people downloading our app and our sales team kind of following up with them over the phone and getting them set up. We continued growing. Our next big milestone was just in February of this year where we launched our consumer app, which we call the anti-reservation app. That's the app that everyone in this room would use to see the wait times and get in line at restaurants. And then our most exciting news back in May, we raised an additional Series B, an additional $10 million from what I think is going to be a venture firm that's going to have a big impact here in Pittsburgh, especially for early stage startup companies like us. Drive Capital, and they're out of Columbus, and they take a West Coast philosophy of building businesses, building network-based businesses, and they're bringing it here to Pittsburgh and kind of the rest of the Midwest. And now we're up to about 25 employees, and we have 10 open positions, mainly in engineering, for us to continue to grow. And then lastly, I'd like to say we're in Oakland, which I think is a nice little startup area, in addition to East Liberty, and we're continuing to grow there. So that's our startup story at No 8, and it's just starting up.
I'd like to thank all of our speakers. Now, if nobody has any pressing questions for any of them, we'll move on to our moderated section of the agenda today. And I'd like to introduce our moderator, Kit Mueller, who many of you in this room probably know. He is a jack of all trades. He's an investor. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's an advisor to many startups in the city and around the country, really. It would probably take me an hour to introduce him properly and talk about all the things he's done, so I'll just mention a couple of the latest things. He is the co-founder of Rustbuilt, which is a nonprofit initiative to help promote and boost innovation in the Rust Belt cities. He is also a co-founder of Figment, which is a social enterprise with textiles that will help to promote hardware and maker innovation. Now, without further ado, I will allow Kit to take the floor.
Well, this is great. Once again, thanks to the mayor and his team for putting this together, and thanks to everybody that had some great words on, identifying and resubstantiating Pittsburgh. It's great to see a broad cross-section of the companies here. My job is to hopefully begin a discussion that will continue on outside of this room, but address some main points up at the top and keep things moving along. As you can see in your agendas in front of you, we've got 3 main points we want to cover, and I'd like to circulate these main ideas, starting with what can Pittsburgh and startups do to ensure civic openness to the communities from which they originate. So, a lot of the things that we do, both as startups and some of the regional things, can't operate in a vacuum. We can't keep improving the same population. We should affect the immediate communities that we're in. And I know many of you are already doing that. So I'd welcome your comments and questions.
If you have a comment, I will pass the microphone around.
Could we elaborate a little more, at least, on what we mean by civic openness?
Sure. So the idea is, how do you get more people involved, and not just necessarily at your company level, right? Not necessarily just hiring, but how do you work with the community in other ways? How do you work with the neighborhoods in other ways? So maybe that's renting vacant space for your company. Maybe that's partnering with organizations in the community. Maybe that's hiring interns in the community. So that type of interaction.
So one of the things that comes to mind, and this is, I just want to get this discussion going. I met with Andrew Moore when they first moved into the new space over at Bakery Square when Google moved in, and sat at his little cubicle and then went over into the conference room, looked out the window, and looked at Larimer. And he was talking about how they were going to bring in 200 more engineers, and I said, "What can you do for that?" And there was a pause. And we now see a lot of money coming into Larimer. It's going to be redeveloped. But whether it's Startup Town and Uptown or East Liberty's redevelopment or Larimer, the Hill, all these different communities, what can be done? You know, Henry has been hired to look at our business districts, and especially those that are not a part of the new economy, and start to find ways. We've got land. We got a lot of land that we can, you know, utilize in order to create space. And how do we get that same space to be utilized in a way that enhances the community and allows the community to be a part of it as well? There's probably some ways out there. A good buddy of ours, Christian Manders, and the folks from the biotech decided to invest in youth football. And wouldn't it be great if Pittsburgh's tech community was also the backers of youth football throughout this city? I mean, there's ways and partnerships, but what are they, and what can you see to connect a ladder of opportunity to communities and individuals that aren't a part right now of the new economy of Pittsburgh, but that could help them to become a part of it? And with that as well, I want to recognize Councilman Lavelle, who is here with us, who probably represents a majority of the area, because he represents the area between downtown and Oakland, and also the areas around it as well that have really probably the biggest impact that could go either way. And it's basically, how do you let those that have struggled through the bad times be a part of the good times? Did you add anything, Councilman?
Thank you. I think the mayor said it correctly in terms of how do we help those who haven't been a part of the prosperity really engage? When he speaks about land, most of you probably know where Heron Avenue is. Heron Avenue is probably one of the most heavily trafficked corridors in the city. It's sort of a lynch between Oakland and the south, or north, excuse me, part of the city. But right now it's just vacant. But it sits right on the edge of the University of Pittsburgh. It sits right in the hub of a historical African-American community that is looking for opportunity. And so I've been engaging many developers or small companies to sort of say, is there a chance for expanding companies such as yours that may need to be close to Carnegie Mellon, close to the university, but may not be able to have that higher level of rent to potentially begin building on land such as Heron Avenue, and you get a win-win. So maybe your business is operating on the second and third floors, but on the first floor we've opened up a cafe that could both service your hires as well as the community needs that is without a cafe. So just to expand, those are the sort of opportunities that I'm particularly interested in.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a comment around that?
Josh. Who are you? Hi, I'm Josh from the hardware store and Crowdosaurus and Red Blue Voice and 5x5 Works. So we have a long history of failure and trying and doing different stuff. We're up in Allentown now on the hilltop working to revitalize that neighborhood. There's kind of a groundswell more broadly in the community. We don't think that traditional institutional investment can be the be-all, end-all for the Pittsburgh entrepreneurial community. It doesn't service enough of the entrepreneurs in the city to make a difference. So we think that there are innovative ways. We think that Pittsburgh can be a model for other cities as to how we can use the sharing economy and non-conventional ways to support small and growing businesses. Because not everybody's appropriate for a $10 million investment or a $3 million investment or even a $250,000 investment. So we were always looking to engage around the idea that there are people out there that can share their knowledge, can open their networks, can provide a kickstart, to pardon the phrase, to help entrepreneurs that aren't necessarily in that mode of institutional investment.
So some of the ways that I've attempted to address this problem in previous places I've worked are Josh is a perfect example of, right? So they've taken a space called the hardware store, which is a co-working space. They're bringing a bunch of people that would never visit that neighborhood into that neighborhood, but they're doing it in a storefront location, and they're doing it with their doors open, and they're doing it with things in the storefront window so that every person who's walking by can see what's going on, can stop in, can say hello, and start to form the kind of relationships that eventually will beget the transfer of these skills and the ideas of what's possible and what this segment of the economy is doing that a lot of these these folks have not yet been exposed to or been a part of. And so when I look around the room, the one thing I would really like everybody to think about is you're not going to go hiring somebody that wasn't a part of your community, that doesn't have your training to be your engineer. They don't have that skill yet. But what you can hire to them to do is some other service that you need. You can, instead of looking up on Yelp where you find the best coffee vendor for your office, you can look around to your community, your neighborhood that you're in, the 2 miles around you, and say, where can I find my catering? Where can I find the coffee I need for this meeting next week, that sort of thing. Because when those folks come in, they say hello to you, you stop being that weirdo from Boston and you start being my new neighbor who's got that new company, and then they talk to their neighbor, and this begets the sort of interaction that is basic, neighborhood level, and creates comfortability. It's something that's been in Pittsburgh for hundreds of years, but it's something that as this community, your community, comes to Pittsburgh, it's going to take a little bit of effort to begin to be a part of. And I know some of you personally, and I know you're all capable of it, and I know most of you are doing it in small ways just because you're that kind of people. But I think that's really what we need to think about the most as far as leveraging all of the great economic activity and new sectors that are coming about in Pittsburgh to also include, you know, the folks that have lived here all along. Yeah.
Well, okay. So I think that there's a lot more people in the room doing stuff in this, and I'm glad that Ian and Luke both raised their hands because I was going to call them next. So Ian or Luke?
Yeah, I'm Ian. I'm from Thread. We take trash and convert it into fabric and then sell the fabric to apparel companies that are trying to get more responsible. I think I really agree with everything that's been said so far. I think that the things like the hardware store, the incubator movement that's taken place in Pittsburgh is core to our growth into neighborhoods like in Heron Avenue and the Hill. We would not have developed in East Liberty with the beauty shop had the beauty shop not existed when it did. That got us into the neighborhood. Right now, there was no investment in us by the beauty shop, but that opened the door and got us into the neighborhood. I do think, however, that in addition to things like the incubator spaces that we're seeing, those open door policies, that we need to see, real institutional investment in coordination with that. Our two of our single biggest investors are the URA and Innovation Works, and I think that any company that has a decent idea that could be profitable should see investment from the City of Pittsburgh. It'd be great to see that. I think having that investment by the city shows it was one of the reasons we stayed. We thought about leaving, and to see that your city back you gave us a reason to say, okay, look, this is something that's worth doing. I think those two working in combination. That incubator space movement with a conscious effort, maybe even with mentoring from places like the city, would really drive business to those places that you're talking about. Otherwise, there'd be no reason for us to go. I love the service provider idea as well.
I was just in Detroit about a month ago, and the conference was held at this place called Tech Town. And it had 125,000 square feet of space, about basically connected to Wayne State University. And there's this momentum being built around Tech Town now. It's a huge co-working space. And similar things have occurred in Washington, D.C. and in Chicago. And I think Pittsburgh is beginning to get momentum with Uptown and Thrill Mill and Alpha Lab and the hardware store, but we don't have a gigantic bullseye when someone comes out of town and they know that they have to spend time in this one particular place. Bakery Square is amazing, but that's a $1 billion corporation, Google, that's predominantly housed there. If there was a place in Larimer or on Heron Boulevard that was just like, best in class from a national perspective, that was really talked about in the Inks and the Wireds and the Mashables of the world, and they're saying like, this is really like unbelievable. We need something truly remarkable to really, I think, move the needle. We have a lot of momentum, but to get it to the next gear, we need to do some big things. And when you look at two of the top 50 research universities in the country are Pitt and CMU. They don't really have sufficient space. I mean, Project Olympus has a little space off of Craig Street. Pitt is always looking for more space. if we have land here and we have all these great assets, it just seems like a natural to try to do something really big and really visionary here. It just seems like it's there for us.
Part of my ignorance. When you say the space, help me better understand what's in that space.
So I think it would be, it's like a beauty shop on steroids. So it's like anybody could go up there. It's gorgeous. You know, you could do hardware, you could do software, nonprofit, education, anything, and you pay $100 a month, and you have like, you're around a community, and you can just start your business, and it's just totally easy to start. And people will gladly pay. They'd rather hang out in a community than go to a Starbucks, and they're around like-minded individuals. And when you're in that momentum, I think great things start to occur.
Are you describing that there's a benefit of having all of those types of places in one particular neighborhood or on one block, as opposed to the way it's been developing now, where there's a pocket over here of 12 companies and a pocket of 4 over there and 5 over there?
I think the pockets are good, but to get it to the next level, you need concentration, or you need one like mega center that's really going to help get it going. Whether that.
Sorry, to add to that, you need both.
You know, as you know, both Luke and Ian were saying, and kind of dovetail that, you know, we're all building businesses, and we think about our pipelines. You know, that's how we're going to grow. And I think as the city pertains, what's the pipeline? Because we're all very head downs and trying to grow and keep our businesses alive. And as Bill said, you know, some of us weren't doing what we're doing a year ago, and a lot of us won't be doing what we're doing a year from now. You know, the odds aren't in our favor. So where is a lot of people, their next opportunity going to be? And it's probably through this, you know, shared effort towards growing this and making sure we're aware of the next potential thing. Maybe not a big thing, but it's something that's potential and comes into this ecosystem. So we're not losing people right out of graduation because it's not available for them, or someone not getting capital or support they need to do it, because it's a time game at that point, and we all need time to do what we're doing.
We'll take one more comment or question on this point.
Sure. To that point, and having everything in one place, I think I come to it a little different perspective. I didn't go to CMU. I didn't, you know, necessarily set out to even be in business. I was a social studies teacher, and in the last 4 to 5 years, venturing into an entrepreneurial journey is one that is very quick, and there's no time. And in Pittsburgh, I feel like I've found my footing in connecting with different people through different resources. In my case, Thrill Mill and Idea Foundry to this point, along with C-Leveled and some other, you know, advisors. But the time spent going from place to place to try to find the resources that I come to find, like, everybody already knew about all around me. And it took me 6 months to figure out that they were even there in the first place. I think that goes a long way to establishing the community and the interaction among the startups themselves and the startup community. But also then, what does that consumer-facing or community-facing, you know, side look like? So now here we are all together. This exists. This is here. Mashable, TechCrunch, all of that, great. But Pittsburgh, you know, Pittsburgh community members, this is all here. We have something to point to and leverage from. I think that's hugely important.
That's great. You all know how much I believe in the need for a centralized hub that includes all the moving pieces of the ecosystem. The good news is these first 2 questions are predicated on a great opportunity we have as we refresh this whole innovation economy here, and that's to be deliberate, right? To be very deliberate in the diversity, in the trajectory, the openness, and the inclusiveness of this rebooted ecosystem that we're building. So on that second point, what are the block and tackle things we can do to encourage inclusion and diversity? And I think we started to bleed into this question with our openness, but I know a couple people wanted to add their comments on this.
So I think, you know, the startup hub is huge, and it's a great idea. I know Ann, Dick, and I all worked in the same space for the last 8 or 9 months at this point, and we're finally moving out now. For the last 3 months, we've all been working to find space together because there was such a community that was built with the 10 companies in the space that we didn't want to leave. We didn't want to go to, you know, 10 different locations and lose that sense of community, and the fact that I could walk down the street and I can walk down the hallway and just talk to, you know, Jonathan from Kite Labs. You know, these PCB, our circuit board quotes are $12. And he looked at it and said, we did our boards and we got them for $1.50. And then sent me the contacts. I'm like, okay, this is much better. That makes everything more viable for us, having a $1 circuit board in there as opposed to a $12 circuit board. And that's something that, unless I knew somebody else who was in that every day, it's a way that we can work with the other companies who may be a little more ahead in some areas and a little behind in others to get ourselves to the end goal of becoming a profitable company faster. That's really what the incubator does for companies, but having a space for everyone to go afterwards is incredibly useful. And I think that's where you're going to get people from the Thrill Mill coming in and Alpha Labs coming in and just other startups from the area coming in, is having that hub that people can actually go and work at. And co-op spaces are wonderful, but there isn't enough room for a company who is growing to go to that spot. Startup Town works as well, but having a huge hub, as Luke said, would be tremendous.
I think the sentiment is that, as we've been deliberate in, giving entrepreneurs swings at bat, and we've started to, I wouldn't say the problem solved, but the new problem that's evolving is growth, that growth stage, which is a very exciting, positive problem to have, right? Josh?
Can I say just one thing?
Sure, no problem.
Before we don't hit the space dead horse, but we're having that same problem because now I'm going from 20 to 40 people and negotiating leases. When people want to give me a 7-year lease, I have no idea where we're going to be in 7 years. And one example, you probably know about the Union Trust building. We looked at that beautiful space that could be the hub for Pittsburgh. That's kind of their vision, but they're kind of out of alignment on what startups actually need. When I need to go from 6,000 to 12,000 to 24,000, square feet in some undefined period of time. So, kind of translating that could actually be very helpful into what we need and what they can offer.
That's true. Oftentimes, as the ecosystem evolves, the tactics and the vernacular are different. So the conversation we need some intermediary, like even just talking from the startup expectations and realities to talking to a real estate agent that needs a triple net 5-year lease. There's a disparity between that, like an investor too.
So I'm going to be the antagonist and poke. See, to me, that's the opposite of inclusion and diversity. When you take all the smart people and all the wealthy people and you put them in one place, that's called gentrification. So what we would like to see is Pittsburgh be known as being innovated by connecting all these neighborhoods into one conglomerate of entrepreneurship. So if you want to be brave, take your 10 companies and move to Millville. Take your 10 companies, move to Homestead, move to Hazelwood. Well, stay in the city. But choose a neighborhood that needs you, right? It's 2014. We got Google Docs. We can collaborate without having to actually physically walk down the street. And honestly, it's a 20-minute drive anywhere in the city.
So,
Go ahead,
Rick Canceller with Treat Space. So I find that I just want to take the conversation away from the location and more onto the people when it comes to diversity. And in our founding team, I just wrote it down, we have a woman who's over 55, a female engineer, an LGBT Asian American, and an Indian software engineer that are part of our founding team. And I think it's difficult to, in a room full of white men, right, and a few women, it is difficult to pull in a diverse team, and the efforts in doing so should be applauded in tax credits, with a platform, and I think access to visas. I know when we first started, we had some incredible talent coming out of CMU that was right at our footstep and working in our team at Alpha Lab. And we lost 3 of them because we didn't have access to visas. The startup visa movement completely fell through for us, and we went right to legislative folks. We had no access to keep some of that talent here. And I think that when you try to go after diversity in a community like ours, we need support, we need a platform, and we need funding. So why not help us in those areas?
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think though, when we're talking about growth and jobs at the next level company, when when you're going from 35 people to 100 people, or when Soul Power starts manufacturing and they need a reason to manufacture in Pittsburgh, rather than some overseas, what's going to keep your company here so that when you hire 50 folks from Larimer to manufacture goods, what's going to say I'm going to hire here, right? We're going to create 50 or 100 jobs here that aren't necessarily founder jobs, but are 9 to 5, good wage, living wage jobs that are going to be because those 100 jobs. I mean Councilman and Mayor, you know how that revitalizes. 100 jobs by itself is a street, a couple of blocks within a neighborhood. So I want to make it easy so that when we're manufacturing products, that we manufacture them here and we can do it easily and in a way that we feel like it's ridiculously easy to manufacture here rather than going to China or overseas.
I believe there's a question.
I think we could also look at the IBM 6-year high school model where they've gone across the country and IBM partners with public schools and they train the students to, they'll service as an engineer for IBM. So right when they graduate from high school, they have a job with IBM. So maybe startups can consider that or internships, partner with the public schools around Pittsburgh so they can train these students who are already part of the community to have the community eye and then also be that diversified voice in your company.
I think Springdale High School is actually starting something like that. They were at Alpha Lab a few weeks ago talking about having startups move to Springdale and work with their students so that the students could potentially move into jobs with them after they graduate.
There's a couple of issues.
So my name is Doug Hilling with FISBO, and I actually wanted to add to that because I just came out of Carnegie Mellon, and there's a couple programs within there that's called experiential learning or practical learning, and what we actually do is they'll bring in consulting groups, and they actually work on real-life problems for their clients, and they're the ones solving the problem, delivering the work product. And as I think about how do you include diversity, because to me, diversity is people of all ages, people of all social economic groups, people who they could be 6-year-old veterans who've been in the business for 40 years, or 12-year-old kids who have a dream. But what I think really determines someone who's successful in the startup community is grit and will to succeed. And I think if you include practical learning, where we provide mentorship in return for those who want to get involved in the community, their work, I think a lot can come out of that. I'll give you an example. For me, I got a lot out of having a few guys work for me who were at Pitt's MBA program, and they worked for free, but because of my experience, they got tremendous value out of that over 6 months because of all the work product that they delivered for my company. And at the end of the day, I think they really grew from that. And so now they can go on and start their own startup or work in the community, whatever they're doing, and that's exactly what they're doing. So they were more confident. We really got a lot out of it, and I think if we can add that type of communal feel throughout the community, that's how you include diversity, because I could actually have a 12-year-old who wants to learn about the business, because I tripped up many times going through this. And it's the same thing that we all face. How do we get the funding? Oh, I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I shouldn't have hired that lawyer. I could have gone online and incorporated my business, right? And so by having this apprenticeship model or this practical learning, they might not be getting personal value out of it in terms of a startup, but they are growing as an entrepreneur. And 5 years from now, they might actually be able to go out and efficiently start more business here in the community.
Right. Sure, please.
So one organization I was really impressed with recently has been Bobby Fry and Food Revolution Pittsburgh Cooking Club. And so what they did is they didn't want to just talk about teaching kids how to really cook better and eat better. They literally got into the Barack Obama Academy and went in there and really taught them the skills. So I think this group is very energized and very able that we could create a partnership with the Pittsburgh Public Schools to really get into the schools and teach entrepreneurship at a very early age. And I'm sure a lot of people in this room would love to be mentors and really help the kids in this community, the public schools in Pittsburgh, to start thinking about entrepreneurship at a younger age. I think that I bet there's a lot of excitement if someone in this room, was invited to participate in something like that. I think you got to start as early as possible to really make it really happen.
I agree. I get a lot of inbound from the public schools and after school programs on what is this entrepreneurship thing, where it starts. Okay.
I got to apologize because that's a perfect segue. I'm going to meet with the Secretary of Education, who's going to be in the Hill District in 15 minutes, and we're going to be talking about early childhood education and making Pittsburgh the model for the nation. However, everything that you're saying about that and the partnerships between the companies that you're creating and the idea of entrepreneurship and the culture of entrepreneurship is something we can work with you with. Not just Pittsburgh Public Schools, but City of Pittsburgh. Next summer, we want to start pushing out a summer of earning and learning. Not just getting kids out there cutting grass, but having mentors to be able to learn. And even if it's a few weeks during the summer, giving them a vision of what they can see. The other thing, and this is key, I think what you were saying earlier, what we fund. My chief of staff is also the chief development officer of the city. He's also the chairman of the URA, and that's Kevin Acklin. And Kevin's been given the green light to overhaul the URA. It's basically the same as it was when Davy Lawrence was the mayor. But we're getting away from funding parking garages and retail. And we're going to really focus in on small business, which is why Henry is here, and focusing on communities that have been left behind, and housing. We're going to rebuild Pittsburgh, the city of Pittsburgh. And so the ideas that you're talking about where the city can be a partner and how that might be able to leverage funding from others when you have the city of Pittsburgh behind you, and what that may mean to other funders, we want to be that angel investor. But we don't have the capacity right now to build out. We have a few people like Jen and Tom, but we don't have the real focus on small business entrepreneurship and housing. And that's where the next URA will be. We may even change the name of the URA. But what your role is to help us understand what it will be, not just to retain your company and help it grow, but to bring others to Pittsburgh. So I apologize I have to leave before this next question, but this isn't the end of the conversation. And everything that you're talking about in those other 3 roundtables will start to merge together. And then it will start to merge with what we've created, the Bureau of Neighborhood Empowerment, and how the communities that haven't had the ladder of opportunity mix with it. And when that happens, watch out, because that's when Pittsburgh hits its potential.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, last question, kind of a doozy. I wanted to sort of change this is the right spirit, but I think that we're all competing on an international platform right now. So I'd like to pose the question that how can we utilize and leverage our regional and national advantages and makeup to be unfairly competitive internationally? So it's all well and good to be able to compete regionally, but we're talking the concepts of startups, which typically mean high growth. So the bar has been raised, and I'd like to pose the question that how do we use the unfair advantages of where we're from, where we're at, to compete on the real marketplace? Alex Ginden had a question? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm Nick N from Shoe Fitter. We create software that helps online shoe shoppers figure out what size to get, and we sell this to large internet retailers. I think one of the things that Pittsburgh could do is to try and include some of the larger organizations in the startup community. So when investors and founders talk about San Francisco and why it's great, they talk about this serendipity of San Francisco. And what they mean by that is you can go to a coffee shop or a startup event and you talk to people from Yahoo and Google and other investors, and deals happen. They happen quickly, they're easy, and you don't find that in Pittsburgh. Our largest customer is a company called Netshoes based in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and we flew down there to close a deal with them. But one of the best companies we would love to close is Dick's Sporting Goods. And I've never seen a representative from Dick's at any startup event. We have companies like American Eagle, who would also be a great customer for us, opening an innovation lab in San Francisco. So if the city could incentivize those companies to partner with startups in Pittsburgh, that would be a great help, or just encourage them to come to these types of events. I know Four Moms is working with an Alpha Labs startup. That's the kind of stuff that really helps small companies make it to the next level.
Reminding those two. Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex Ginden, CEO and founder of Amplified. Actually, my comment is directly in line with that. We work with a lot of different companies right now, and what we found is that not only, to your point with Four Moms, you guys are trying to recruit people away from larger organizations right now. These larger organizations are also trying to get their people into the startup ecosystem, because for them it means smarter, faster, more innovative people. And we've gone and talked to a lot of different organizations. Our job is to help make their people stronger, better, more resilient, and more innovative. So when we go and talk to these organizations, we ask them, are they aware of some of these events? We've brought a lot of people to startup weekends, to hackathons, just by informing these companies that they exist. And they've seen a lot of dividends from this. And so I think that, in Pittsburgh, we're a small community. We have a lot of powerhouse organizations here. And I don't think we're doing a lot or as much as we can right now to leverage that. And I know that they want to on the other side of the table. We want to on our side of the table. And I think we need a lot of help in bridging that gap right now.
I have to agree that the disconnect between the nascent tech sector and the major stakeholders that have their names on buildings is palpable. So that's a big point.
I would say a big thing that especially the city could do is really externally. I'm trying to recruit a lot of people from the Bay Area, Seattle, New York, and everyone says to me, well, this sounds like a really good opportunity, but I've never really thought about Pittsburgh. I wish they would say, I've been hearing a lot of good things about Pittsburgh, a lot of startups coming out of Pittsburgh, and I think it comes by companies like Four Moms that are getting that next level. And like Free Markets did way back in the day, but we need a couple big ones like that. But we also need, I think, that press. We need that ad campaign from the city or someone, whoever does that kind of stuff, to keep on putting out all the amazing things that are actually really happening in the city, and putting them out there and getting those news stories on, CNN and Fox and in the magazines and Inc. and all that kind of stuff. So it builds up over time. But I'd love for people from Seattle or Portland to say, well, I've been hearing a lot of good things about Pittsburgh and everything that's going on there. I'd like to be a part of that community.
And we need to give more wins to celebrate and write about.
This all sounds like it comes back to we don't have the one single bright shining star that we all look to. And we have lots of various smaller organizations and efforts and things, and we still, again, it's not replacing those, but they need to be all aligned towards one main thing. And that's expensive. It takes time. So again, back to as the city can help, it's supporting that effort, because it's people, it's physical space, it's time where everything ultimately gets aligned back to. And the other key component is that's where the training happens and how we can engage with the community, because, I'm speaking from a software perspective, and a lot of us are in that. That's a specialty skill. It takes oftentimes and years of education and direct experience to do that. And that's where that training needs to happen to engage with the community, because it will take months, if not years, to build up the skill set in this hungry workforce to really get them involved in a lot of these kinds of companies that are continuing to be at the center of that growth. So it's aligning to that, again, beacon, whether it's led by the city or whatever initiative it is. We all align to that, and we still do what we do, but that helps us nationally. That's where the PR comes from. That's where all the support and what we do, and it's getting Innovation Works aligned with that. It's the big companies aligned with that. It's all the small companies and the universities. So that's, it sounds like what we all are saying lead back to that, end game for us.
Rick?
I love the things we're talking about. I think Pittsburgh does need PR. I love the idea of large companies here incubating startups. I also think that there's an elephant in the room. It's that Pittsburgh needs to support and attract capital from other regions. And one of the things that I love about what Drive did, the group that invested in No Wait, is the state governor of Ohio recruited Mark out of Sequoia and into Ohio. Literally, the legislative pulled him out of one of the largest VC firms in Silicon Valley and brought him to Ohio, supported him with funding from the state, and challenged them to grow a very large fund to invest in their region. And that's what they're doing. So from a legislative standpoint, how can Pittsburgh find someone like Mark and pull him out of an embedded location where he's at, someone that brings clout and brings experience to the table, and raise some money in this region?
We did actually hire a man named Kevin White, partially for that reason. There's a man that works at the URA now named Kevin White. He's just getting, pardon? Eric White, excuse me. Good, I'm typing too many notes. Eric White, who's coming exactly for that reason. And that is his experience. And well, he hasn't hit the ground, or at least just hitting the ground now. We hear you, and I would personally would love to hear more specifically. It's not something I have an incredible amount of insight in, and you do. And so please, let's talk later, and so I can understand that better and more clearly. Yeah. Would you pass this down, please?
So when Steve Case was here, the founder of AOL, a couple weeks ago, one of the things that he said, he went to Pittsburgh, Detroit, Cincinnati, and Nashville, was that he said that Pittsburgh probably had the best assets of any of the 4 cities that he went to, but we did the worst job of bragging and selling our story. So, part of the question is, it's almost feeling like we got to get to the next level. We actually probably are where we need to be, but everyone in this room just needs to sell it locally and nationally. A quick plug here for kind of a lot of what we're talking about is, Thrill Mill's largest fundraiser of the year is the Thrival Innovation and Music Festival on September 13th and 14th, and that is a combination of everything innovation, music, trying to create a spotlight so the people from Boston and Seattle and Baltimore and DC actually have a logical reason to come to Pittsburgh. We're trying to get 10,000 people here. We're headlining with Moby and Portugal the Man. We're trying to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for local entrepreneurs. This is what everybody needs to rally around. We're just trying to find something to rally around, and I think this is a great thing to do that with.
Well, to Luke's point, I think the conversation has changed, and half the reason to predicate this meeting is this: it's no longer Pittsburgh's being cool again someday. It's really cool again. And I think we need to own that and own it from within, and we don't need outside validators, and the stuff that he's doing is one of them too.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd add to what Luke said about the local resources. The manufacturing we have in the area is second to none, and it's really hard for a startup to go and find some of those resources. We've been working through those issues the last 6 months, and it's been something that we've been struggling with to make sure that everything hits our manufacturing needs and is to the tolerances that we need to have a working product. And then, what Rick was saying, bringing the capital in, we've been on the fundraising trail for the last 6 months. I mean, it's something that we've gone and we found potential investors in New York, DC, Salt Lake City, San Francisco, all over the country, and it's we have worked with some of the angels in the area, but it's just not the same level as other places you'll find. Yeah, huge gap.
Colin Heiler, CEO of Optimus Technologies. We're a manufacturing startup technology company, and we build fuel systems for diesel engines to run on biofuels. Just to echo some comments that were made earlier, one, I mean, on the fundraising trail, we're looking Boston, Boston, New York. I was participating in the Clean Tech Roundtable a couple weeks ago, and most of the companies around the room that were looking for funding weren't looking for funding in Pittsburgh because it's just not here. And the second thing with that is, comment made, you're probably not doing the same thing you were a year ago, or there's a likelihood you're not going to be doing the same thing a year from now. And deals can't take a year or two to put together. That just can't happen if you want to stimulate innovation and urgency around the growth of startups. And my last point is just that there's a lot of this happening. It's just not being connected. It's not being networked and branded as this package that Pittsburgh offers. And I've been here for about 7 years now, and I love Pittsburgh. I call it my home, and it's really exciting to see all this amazing stuff happening. So,
we're glad you're part of it. Ian, final question.
I really.
Nice talks.
Oh, thanks. I agree with Rob and some of the points that have been made around branding. I think we lean too much on our visitors bureau, on Visit Pittsburgh. It's not about conventions. It's about PR and placement in those, the places where people who count when it comes to entrepreneurship, read those things. The other thing I think is we do a really poor job of is tax credits. I think the KIZ needs to be strengthened in a major way, and I think that Pittsburgh has a serious role to play in that. It should be as easy to start a company here as it is to make a movie, and I think that we see and the benefits are there. I mean, we see the benefits to movies coming to town, but we're not doing that with small business. The KIZ as it is a mess, and I think that we need real support in Harrisburg, and I think there's room there to cooperate with Philadelphia. That really, I think we've seen huge benefits from the KIZ by being in those buildings, but nobody knows really where they are and how to do it and how to navigate it. So
Awesome. Well, sustained and increased, right?
Yeah, and cheaper flights.
And cheaper flights.
Kid and I spent 15 hours in the car 2 weeks ago because it was $1,300 to fly to New York.
That's a big
A
problem.
lot of us can't afford that, and that's not the right spend of our money.
And I don't want to do that
We did
again.
that trip in 26 hours, and we went there.
Because-
I was there, you got to meet with investment with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, quick. Tom Link, I'm with the URA, and I think a lot of folks here actually know me. But just a real quick follow-up on the KIs. Do you think it's an issue of lack of information, or do you think it's something structural about the tax credit that's an issue?
Tax credit's great.
So the tax credit itself is good.
Yeah, it's great.
It's how do you know where you are, if you're eligible, and how do you get it?
Yeah, and
Why is my building KIZ?
Right. I just wanted to be clear because I wasn't sure if we're talking about something about the program.
when we looked to rent a space, we felt very limited. And you know, Councilman asked earlier how to draw businesses to Heron Avenue. You want to draw business to Heron Avenue? Let them sell their tax credits because we'd go there in a second. In a second. It would be a no-brainer. We have a potential of having a Democrat in the State House in the next round, and that's going to give credence to the fact that there's maybe potentially more than 2 people working at that desk in Harrisburg. There's an opportunity to strengthen it. I think we have to hit it now.
You guys like the R&D tax credit?
Yeah, we just got a $10,000 check from the R&D tax credit a week ago.
The tools are
Absolutely, yeah. I think, like Luke said, redrawing the lines, to make it more zone-oriented.
I think it's a pod.
Thank you so
Is
much.
that your announcement for candidacy? Hey, really quickly, guys, thank you for all your input on this. I know it's the beginning of a great conversation. It's important, and I appreciate you guys for coming here. Thanks for having me, and I'll be quiet and sit down.
Thank you so much, Ken, and thank you to all the speakers. I really hate to cut the conversation, as I think it's just starting to bubble, and I know there's a lot of good conversation that will continue after this, and that's entirely the point of these roundtables. It's to convene a really good, smart, diverse group of people to discuss very challenging questions, but very important questions. We don't have the answer immediately, but I think through this process we will hope to drive innovation further. Just a little bit about the next steps before we close. So as the mayor articulated very well in terms of the opener, this is the final of the 4 roundtables. The first focused on makers, the second on clean tech, the third on accelerators and co-working spaces, and then the fourth on startups. And with all these roundtables, I'm starting to hear common themes, about branding, about transportation, about infrastructure, about networking. And we're taking all these collectively to build an innovation roadmap that we're hoping to launch by the end of this year. This innovation roadmap is a concrete set of actions that we as the innovation community can track, progress, and guide and take forward. And so these ideas, these thoughts, these challenges are all going to be part of an ongoing discussion. So I thank you. I really always like to take a step back in these roundtables because I feel like the expertise is in this room, and it's very important for me to just listen and engage. But we will be following up with each of you to kind of understand a little bit more. And we thank you for coming here and for your contribution. And I want to give a special thanks to Jennifer and Jeff and Tara for making this happen, and for the City Cable team for filming this. Again, this is going to be replayed on our City Cable channel. Tara's been live tweeting this on PGHIP. So this is all going to be open to the broader public for ongoing engagement. So thank you again, and take care.
Can I ask you a quick question? So you've seen kind of 4 weeks of themes here. So what is the low-hanging fruit right now that you feel you can really implement that's going to have the biggest impact? What do you see right now?
Well, those are all very good questions. I actually see the branding, the marketing as something that we're actually starting to discuss. I know Kevin and I have started to discuss this, and then the networking. bringing the people together. That's something that I'm hearing a lot, that I think is something that we can definitely do, and we'll be starting to do that in the fall. So that stay tuned is the answer. We'll definitely be following back. We definitely don't intend this to be a talk fest. It's going to be a do fest, and I actually expect all of you to be contributed and supported beyond this. So you'll definitely hear from us. Thank you.